Okay, so hi Daniel. Thank you for coming to People Please newsletter, and I'm going to ask you a couple of questions, exploring very specific topic on financial well-being for expats. So before I get into the actual questions, I quickly want to understand where you come from, what's your background, education, what you've been up to in life so far, and how can I share your profile with my audience.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Shika. Thanks for your interest in this story and the work that I'm trying to do. Um, yeah, I my background, I have nothing to do with finance. My background is actually in horticulture. So I studied plant science at Cornell in the US, which is where I'm from. That work eventually led me overseas. So I started in South America and later I came to Africa almost 20 years ago to grow plants and work in commercial greenhouse businesses. From there, at one point, I got an MBA. And after getting an MBA, I returned to Africa, but ended up in Mozambique and found I needed to pivot my career from greenhouse horticulture to other types of work. And I ended up in international development, so working at NGOs and international NGOs, focused at various times on human nutrition and later on livestock and agricultural research. Um, in the midst of all of that and how this relates to the work I'm doing now, I found myself signed up for a financial product. And I invested with someone whom I trusted at the time and who I thought had my best interests at heart. But later I realized that the thing that I had been sold was actually not very convenient and not very um, efficient in helping me meet my financial goals. And essentially I felt kind of ripped off from that. And I resolved to, once I had recovered from that situation, I resolved to help other people, and particularly expats, avoid a similar fate. Yeah. Now I live in Kenya, which I've lived in for 20 years. And also as a result of some of the recent geopolitical changes, my role is being phased out. Many development organizations are reducing in size. And so we're all needing to find other types of things to do. And so what I'm exploring now is this work that we're going to talk about.
Awesome. So, Daniel, of course, I'm not going to delve into the development sector and the impact that it has got due to the current
Yep.
government in the US, because that's another Pandora box that I'm not going to open. But now that you've decided that you are going to explore financial well-being of expats, my first question to you is that, you are turning a very bitter experience into something that is going to help people who are not going to be conned the way you were
Yep.
conned. And when you decided this, you also knew that this is not an active financial incoming for you instantly. And, financial viability is the first step to ideating or stepping ahead into a career that you're trying to now build from scratch. Just talk about it a little bit to me on this aspect.
Yeah. Well, on some level, this is a slight leap of faith, to be very honest. I have been working, I'm in my late 40s now. I've been working very hard for over 20 years. So I have a bit of savings and a bit of cushion, and I know that I don't need to replace, every single paycheck once I leave the job that I'm in now. So I'm in a position of, I'm in a blessed position, I would say, a position of relative privilege, where I don't have to try to make it feasible from day one. So I'm able to explore it. I'm able to invest in it. I don't need a return on it immediately. And there are questions around. It's interesting because when you are in the financial industry, which I've never been in, but if you are in that, I mean, the money really seems to flow, and the commissions that people can earn are really amazing and high. And if you're on the other side of the situation, trying to help people actually save money or help people do better, make better financial decisions, even though essentially you're adding value to their lives, the ability to monetize that is relatively limited. People have a hard time paying for knowledge. They have a hard time paying for, they don't realize the value of intelligence and better decisions always. And so it is difficult to monetize a proposition where you're giving people, even if it would work out better for them in the long term, it is difficult to make that sale and to make it at a, at a price point that's going to add value for me as much as for them. But that's part of the exploration. It's part of my personal process, and I also see this as a thing that is helping me develop as well. So I'm expecting returns beyond just the financial ones.
Awesome. So that's a really, I think, a noble step that you've taken. And to come to your now the core work that you're doing on financial well-being, take me through the process of when somebody come and start learning with you, how and how do you go about it?
How do we go about it? Yeah, that's a good question. So I think, what people really struggle with and what they do not have is financial literacy. They do not understand compound interest. They don't understand the economy. They don't understand stocks and bonds and those types of central banks. All of those things are confusing to people. And people are intimidated about learning about it because I think there's a bit of shame, there's a bit of taboo, there's a bit of people think that money and finance is a bit icky and intimidating, and they almost don't want to engage with it. So the beginning of the situation is helping people reduce their anxiety around that. And so it does not start with mathematics. It doesn't start with equations. It starts with some reflections on where people have been in their lives financially and where they've gotten their views on money, whether that was from childhood or from previous experiences or things they were taught or told in the past. So the first question is really, what is your relationship to money, and how does that relate to your relationship with everything else in life? So what are your values? What are the things you feel you should accomplish with your life? And then thinking about, in the broad context of what I call it is a worldview and a wealth view. So you have a worldview, you have a way you see this planet and your interactions with it. And then from that, you think about, okay, now I also have money, and money is part of that. Money is part of my human experience, right? How do I now engage with money and finance in a way that is coherent with my worldview? So it's the worldview and the wealth view.
Interesting.
From there, then it becomes a question of, okay, so you've understood your values and your goals and your purpose. From there, then it becomes a question of the mechanics of it and understanding, given that situation and those goals, then you can start bringing the math to it, helping people understand what those goals will cost or what that lifestyle will require, and then mapping that to reality and then thinking about the financial decisions.
So, I really resonate with what you're doing, but I also want to ask you the next question is that, do you think there is a very specific kind of products for expats that may not be applicable for civilians in different kind of countries?
Well, I am an expat. That phrase is a bit fraught. Sometimes I prefer cross-border individual or cross-border family, just because people, there's an issue around using the term expat versus migrant, refugee, all of that. But it's a person who's essentially from one place and then working and living in some other place, generally for purposes of their work. I think there are some differences. I live in Kenya, and in my conversations with citizens of this country, I realize that their financial lives are a bit different. They tend to invest in property more than in financial instruments. They tend to have multi-generational homes and multi-generational wealth, and they have large family businesses. And so that whole situation and those circumstances are considerably different from, let's say, a situation that I'm in, which is being an American citizen, married to a German, living in Kenya, and with investments in fourth countries. So the core of our relationship with money is not different. That the psychological aspects, I think, are very similar. But when you start thinking about the practical applications of that, then there is something unique about people who are managing their financial lives across various jurisdictions, which is the case of these expats, and which is different from people um, who are kind of born, raised, working, and related uh, to one particular country.
So I want to pick up Kenya, and because you're based there, do you think you can share some of the names of the products that you would like to explore in your course, that you are going to elaborate to all your participants?
Right. So actually, that's a good question. And what I'm not pushing is any products.
Hmm.
There are, as you know, there are very specific rules around what constitutes general information and coaching and capacity building. And then at some point that transitions into becoming advice, where you're saying like, here's what you should do, and here's what you should buy, and
Hmm.
here's the appropriate plan for you.
Hmm.
I am not taking it as far as doing that. I'm not a financial analyst or planner. And so I don't see it as part of my mandate to tailor recommendations to a specific individual and say, this is the product that's going to help you. My work is more around helping people understand their relationship to money, where they're in partner relationships, then having that conversation also with a partner, and then
Hmm.
helping them understand that in the context of their life and their goals and their values, and then helping them understand how the markets work in general, so that when they go to a financial planner and when that person says, "Oh, here's the education savings plan or the health savings plan or the mutual fund or whatever instrument is correct," when that person recommends an instrument to them, they are able to say, "Oh, I understand enough about um, expense ratios and things like that to know that this is a good thing or this is a bad thing." But I'm not going as far as saying this product or this advisor or this instrument is correct for you.
So, what are the pain points that cross-country people face when they are managing their money in another country from where they do not belong? What are the key issues that you have spotted, that you are very cognizant of, and you are actually talking about that in your course?
Right. So there are, there are a number, and they range from the lifestyle type of things to also, there's cultural things, there's lifestyle things, and then there are very technical things. Culturally and in terms of lifestyle, if you have people who are cross-border and also, let's say, married to someone who's from another culture than them, then you've got that cultural difference and maybe a different relationship with money, even within the relationship.
Right.
Um, so there's that. There is an issue of when you are, for many expats, if you're posted abroad, then you have kind of um, you sometimes have more money, more allowances, let's say a stipend for rent or other expenses. So while you're in the situation, the cash flow can be very good, but because you're often removed from your home country, let's say Social Security or pension fund, then you might just be getting cash and not be getting pension or something for later. People are also renting, so they're not typically investing in, they're not building equity in a home by paying mortgage. So there are these aspects of, it's like a lot of feast right now as an expat, and then later there's a real risk that it's famine if you're not disciplined about saving and making plans for that a more stable time in life. There's also the issue around several jurisdictions. So you might be working in one country, you might be subject to tax in that country. You may also be subject to tax in your home country. You may be investing in either of those countries or some other country. So you've got this issue of trying to triangulate between multiple jurisdictions. And if you're from a particular country, there's a good chance you can find a qualified um, financial planner to help you understand that country's legislation. Those are millions of them in the US and other countries. But if you are, let's say you're an American married to a Polish person and living in Zimbabwe, who is the person who's going to know the jurisdiction, know all the rules around those various jurisdictions and help you really understand what is right for you? There are very few. And the people that there are people who are essentially salesmen trying to sell products and trying to fill this gap by saying, I've got just what's right for you. But these are essentially con men. in my experience and in my personal experience, I mean, firsthand. These are con men who are telling you that they have something that's very good for you, but actually they have something that's convenient. It's very easy to sign up and put your money into it, but if you take a step back and look at the returns on it, look at the expenses, look at the the lack of flexibility that these products have, then you're essentially, I mean, you're getting ripped off by investing in them. So it's a lot around that. It's around the various jurisdictions and the confusion that comes with that, and also the anxiety and the lack of guidance. Yeah.
Hmm. So, when it comes to financial well-being, specifically people who are cross-country, it's the last thing that they would think of, and they don't really know that they need it. And that not knowing the need, how are you communicating that there is a need and it's actually urgent? What exactly do you say to communicate that urgency?
That's to some degree, I think you have to depend on the grace of God to help people, to lead people to understand that it's important, because you really cannot convince someone of this if they're not ready to hear it. And it's this, you see the same thing with people and their healthcare and their diets and their nutrition and exercise and those kind of things. People put off what's good for them in the long run. But at some point, you have to hope that people have that feeling in the back of their mind that tells them that this is something that should cause me a bit of anxiety and I need to get on top of. And what I've discovered is that that anxiety is there for many, many people. Most of us, I think. What is not there is an ability to communicate about it. So there's essentially a taboo around discussing money and finance. I launched a LinkedIn newsletter about a month ago, and I've already got almost 700 people who have subscribed to that. That tells me that they're really, it's a pertinent topic. People are interested in knowing more about it. I think people are afraid of being the first one to say, I really don't know how to manage my own money. And that in conversations one-on-one and in other places, you find people kind of confessing that anxiety. So it's around being present and being ready, so that when people, have that feeling and think like, maybe I should look at this, maybe I should admit that I don't understand, being ready for them to come forward.
Interesting. So, financial well-being is a topic that very recently in a very elite group I was discussing, and how these two people who come from very privileged backgrounds said that it's not a life skill for everyone. What's your take on that?
Well, it's not a life skill for everyone. I wasn't part of that conversation. So I don't know, the context of it.
No, I mean,
But
to give you little background, actually the context is just this much, that because I'm in financial literacy profession, they think that I can go and do it for specific audience and masses, but for a very small section of society, it's not a life skill. Like people who are women who are rich specifically, they don't need to have this life skill. That was the context. Like women specifically who are from rich backgrounds, they don't need to manage money and they don't need to understand money. Not every woman needs to be financially literate. And I stepped back and I got edgy and I was trying to understand. And today I was ready to ask you this. What's your take
yeah,
on it?
I think that's as politely as I can, I would say that's baloney. I think that I think that everyone who is ready and who has an interest in understanding money should understand money, and maybe even more. I don't think that it's
Do
something
you
you should
think
say.
the Queen Elizabeth would want should understand money?
Well, in today's world, I mean, the world we've created, which is a capitalist and it's a world of markets and economy. I mean, money is the way in which we essentially exchange value with one another. And so our contributions to the world, I mean, it's different maybe if you're a monk, but For the rest of us who are working every day, the way in which we exchange our value with the rest of society generally becomes monetized, right? So money is the energy that we put into the world by being a teacher, by being a nurse, by being a president of a country, all of those things. I mean, as they come back to us, they become monetized, and that energy is transformed into money, right? And people think money is maybe evil or something, but essentially it's the way in which we track our exchanges with one another. And so I think as long as you're part of society and as long as you're contributing to it and benefiting from it, you should understand
That's a
how that
brilliant
thing
answer.
works. Yeah.
That's a brilliant answer. I love it. I love what you said.
Yeah.
And I often say that to myself, that if anybody doesn't want and should not be understanding money too much, that in my mind was always just a monk. Except for monk, I felt that everybody who's contributing or is taking something from society is liable to understand money because it impacts every section of society that we are part of.
It's interesting. I agree with you. I agree with you. And I think it's interesting how we behave towards money versus how we behave towards other aspects of life. I think, we all understand, for example, I liken it to, let's say, nutrition or exercise. You don't have to be a physiologist to understand that, getting 30 minutes of exercise most days of the week is really a good way to, if you know that, you essentially know enough to live a healthy life. If you know about having a diversified diet, you don't have to understand, I don't know, molecular biology or anything to understand, like, you should be eating more fruits and vegetables, right? And in the same way with money, the level of understanding that you need to have
Is basic.
a life, it's very basic. It's very
It's
basic.
basic.
And
Yeah.
if you want to go into the details, that's fine and it's well and good.
And
But
you're most
the
welcome.
basic
I
knowledge we all
totally
need.
agree that the basic of everything that runs our life by being part of the society is something that is non-negotiable. But if you want to be an expert, okay, you're most welcome. But that's not what we're
No,
saying.
no,
We're saying to
no. But to be
understand.
totally ignorant is just, I mean,
It's
there's no
stupid
excuse for
according to
that.
me.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
stupid
yeah.
according to me.
No, and if you spend I mean, we spend a lot of time and a lot of energy working and bringing that money into our bank accounts. To be totally ignorant about you know, how that thing functions
Correct.
is really self-defeating.
Right, right. If you were to say something about money to the audience who's going to read the newsletter, how would you define money in whatever number of words that you want to define them?
I mean, money is essentially, I mean, wealth and money are two different things, if you ask me. But I think money is the way in which I see it as the way in which we track our exchanges with one another in a market economy. And so I really see it as, I don't see it as a spiritual thing, but I see it as a thing that is neither good nor evil. I think it is a necessary part of our world and our global community. And I think it has the power to be a tool for the lives that we want to live. It also, because it's so useful, other people want what is rightfully ours, right? So we have to be essentially good stewards of what we have, and we have to be careful and we have to be a bit savvy. So basic understanding of personal finances is a fundamental part of living one's purpose, because without that, you're either squandering earnings you've made from work you've done, or putting yourself at risk of being taken advantage of by someone else.
Interesting. So, how would you differentiate between money and wealth?
I think wealth is a sort of, I mean, money is kind of a thing and it's a bit of a commodity. Wealth is a power. Wealth is a force. Wealth is an ability to do what we want, when we want, with whom we want. And so it's not about, I mean, wealth is not big homes and opulence and precious metals. Wealth is really around, it's more around freedom than around possessions.
Interesting. It's about freedom than around possessions. Very nice. I love it. That's very nice. So, Daniel, is there anything else that you think we should bring forward in the article that I have missed asking you?
No, I don't think. I think I would offer encouragement to the audience, that you do not need people. I think I would offer encouragement, and I would encourage people not to be intimidated by something that they don't understand. The core principles and what people need to learn in order to live a financial life that is coherent with the other aspects of their lives are generally quite basic. And I would encourage people to take small steps to learn that, for their own good and for the good of the other people in their lives that they're trying to help.
Sure. So I'm going to stop this recording now.